What Camilla just realised behind closed doors is that the most dazzling treasures of the British Empire have suddenly become her ultimate undoing. For decades, the glittering vaults of the royal collection were the ultimate prize. The definitive visual proof she believed would completely legitimise her reign and erase the past forever. But hours before a highly televised state reception, what looked like a routine administrative update regarding royal heritage, preservation was actually a total dismantling of her carefully curated image. When she was politely informed that the most significant dynastic tiaras were no longer available for her use, and was subsequently directed to navigate through a secondary palace entrance away from the primary global cameras, the devastating reality set in. Camilla had been coldly, systematically, and legally locked out of the true dynastic legacy. This is the story of a silent, ruthless retaliation, executed not with shouting matches or public scandals, but with weaponized administrative protocol. In less than 24 hours, the illusion of her absolute power collapsed under the crushing weight of historical decrees updated by the very women she thought she had outmaneuvered. By the end of this video, we will unpack the secret power grab Camilla attempted within the deeply guarded Royal Collection Trust, how Princess Anne and Catherine discovered the quietly altered requisition documents, and the devastating realization that despite the grand title bestowed upon her, she actually controls absolutely nothing of enduring value. To understand the absolute humiliation of this moment, we must first look at the massive psychological fortress Camilla spent over 30 years building. Her journey from the shadows to the throne was a masterclass in long-term public relations and staggering institutional endurance. She survived the immense moral outrage of the 1990s, meticulously navigating the fierce, enduring grief of a public that fiercely protected the memory of Diana. Step by deliberate step, she engineered her transition from the ultimate royal outsider to the anointed queen. Her strategy relied on subtle institutional erasure, slowly removing the visual reminders of her predecessor while elevating her own non-royal family into the periphery of the sovereign circle. She operated under the absolute certainty that she had King Charles completely controlled. She believed his ascension to the throne meant the royal vaults and all their historical weight were entirely hers to command. She viewed the historic diamonds, emeralds, and pearls not just as magnificent accessories, but as the ultimate forensic proof of her total victory over her critics. Right before the collapse, she felt entirely untouchable, secure in the illusion that she had finally conquered the system. But that illusion of absolute power bred a dangerous and ultimately fatal overreach. As the realities of the king's health challenges began to cast a long, quiet shadow over the daily operations of the monarchy, Camilla initiated a highly secretive administrative maneuver. What we know from emerging patterns within the palace bureaucracy suggests she attempted to quietly restructure the lending protocols of the Royal Collection Trust. Her goal was deeply strategic and born out of a quiet, creeping commercial desperation. She sought to secure permanent, unrestricted access to the most iconic pieces of royal jewelry, not just for herself during the current reign, but to establish a legal precedent that could theoretically extend certain privileges or proximity to her own bloodline in the future. It was a desperate grab for enduring institutional relevance. A calculated way to anchor her personal legacy in the physical multi-billion-pound wealth of the crown before the inevitable. Transition of power reduced her status to that of a king's widow. She tried to rewrite the internal rules of the royal vaults, relying on the assumption that the bureaucratic machinery was too archaic and deferential to notice her modern exploitation of the system. However, she catastrophically underestimated the forensic vigilance of the true dynastic guardians. The turning point occurred when Catherine, the Princess of Wales, fully supported by the fiercely protective Princess Anne, initiated a comprehensive review of the Royal Collection's operating charters and historical preservation mandates. That detail matters immensely because in the British royal family, true power does not lie in who holds the title of Queen Consort on paper. It lies in who controls the access to the historical narrative and the physical symbols of sovereignty. Catherine, deeply and quietly aware of the heavy symbolic weight of Diana's legacy, and Anne, the undisputed enforcer of institutional discipline, began auditing the recent requests flowing from Camilla's private office. Together they uncovered a quiet paper trail of requisition orders and protocol, amendments designed to monopolize the most recognizable dynastic treasures. It was a direct, calculated attack on Catherine's future reign and an attempt to permanently dilute the biological lineage's exclusive rights to its own deeply personal history. The discovery of this quiet manipulation did not result in a dramatic confrontation or a leaked tabloid war. Instead, it triggered a masterclass in cold institutional retaliation. The counterstrike was executed with terrifying weaponized restraint. Catherine and Anne did not confront Camilla in the grand drawing rooms of Buckingham Palace. Instead, they used the labyrinthine system of royal heritage management to utterly dismantle her access without ever raising their voices. By invoking centuries-old protocols regarding the strict preservation of sovereign assets and heavily tightening the rules around pieces specifically categorized as biological dynastic heritage, they effectively sealed the vaults. What looked like a routine preservation and insurance update to the public was in reality a total containment strategy. The newly signed administrative directives explicitly restricted the most iconic jewels, particularly those inherently tied to Diana and the direct line of succession, reserving them exclusively for the working royals of the bloodline and the future queen. The paperwork was flawless, the logic was rooted entirely in historical preservation. Camilla was suddenly stripped of the visual power she so desperately craved, and she could not launch a single complaint without exposing her own staggering entitlement. The retaliation was silent, absolute, and completely unassailable. The trap snapped shut in the most devastatingly public, yet silently orchestrated manner possible. On the evening of the major televised reception, the new administrative reality was physically enforced. Camilla found herself not only denied the specific legacy pieces she had demanded to wear, but the updated security protocols suddenly dictated a new logistical flow for her evening. Under the impenetrable guise of security efficiency and protocol management, she was quietly ushered through a side door, her access to the grand central entrances fully revoked. She was forced to walk the secondary hallways while Catherine arrived in full sovereign splendor, wearing the very legacy pieces Camilla had tried to claim. The visual humiliation was profound, a symbolic institutional exile executed in plain sight. When the crushing weight of this administrative defeat became undeniable, Camilla turned in absolute desperation to the one man who had always shielded her. She looked to King Charles, pleading for a furious defense, expecting him to issue a royal decree to overturn the humiliating restrictions imposed by his sister and his daughter-in-law. She demanded that he assert his absolute authority and restore her dignity. But this is where the dynamic fundamentally broke and where the devastating truth of her position was laid bare. The king, frail, exhausted, and acutely aware of the shifting tides of power within his own house, simply looked away. He offered nothing but a devastating, immovable silence. The silence of the king in that corridor was not a momentary lapse of affection, but a devastating surrender to the brutal mathematics of the monarchy. King Charles understands a fundamental truth that Camilla has spent 3 decades trying to ignore. He knows that he is a transitional monarch, a custodian bridging the gap between his mother's historic reign and the wildly popular, modernized future promised by William and Catherine. When forced to choose between satisfying the immediate vanity of his wife and preserving the institutional harmony demanded by his heirs, Charles chose the crown. By refusing to intervene, by allowing the administrative restrictions of his sister and daughter-in-law to stand, he silently acknowledged where the true power now resides. That psychological climax shattered the very foundation of Camilla's confidence. She realized in that instant that her ultimate protector would no longer burn political capital to fight battles she could not win on her own. She was completely exposed, stranded in a royal ecosystem that was already operating on the time zone of the next reign. With the king stepping back, the staggering reality of Camilla's commercial desperation was laid completely bare. The public consumes the monarchy as a monolith of glittering wealth, assuming that the title of queen comes with the keys to an unlimited treasure chest. But the structural truth of the British royal family is entirely different, and for Camilla, it is a financial nightmare. She does not own the crown she wears. She possesses no sovereign wealth. The billions of pounds wrapped up in the Royal Collection trust the historic estates, and the Duchy of Cornwall are entirely insulated from her grasp. Her reality is that of a highly visible, heavily monitored institutional tenant. Everything she utilizes, from the security details to the diamond necklaces, is fundamentally borrowed from the state and the biological lineage. She spent over 30 years running the most successful public relations campaign in modern history to secure a title, only to discover that the title itself came with zero equity. Without the absolute combative backing of the king, her illusion of permanence dissolves. leaving her with the terrifying realization that upon his passing she has no institutional collateral to leverage. This inherent vulnerability allowed Catherine to execute a flawless reclamation of the sovereign space. Catherine did not need to engage in the petty briefing wars that defined Camilla's rise to power. She did not need to leak stories to the press or launch a whisper campaign. She simply stepped into her rightful, unassailable position as the true matriarch of the future and let the sheer weight of protocol do the work. By strictly enforcing the rules regarding biological dynastic heritage, Catherine masterfully restored the legacy of Princess Diana, embedding it directly into the daily visual language of the monarchy. The subtle shifts in protocol are utterly devastating when you know what to look for. When Catherine appears at state banquets wearing the definitive tiaras of the bloodline, and Camilla is relegated to secondary pieces or items clearly separated from the primary sovereign narrative, it sends an undeniable global message. Catherine is demonstrating that she is not merely the wife of the heir, she is the living embodiment of institutional continuity. She is occupying a space so vast and legitimate that Camilla is naturally quietly pushed to the administrative margins. The ultimate tragedy of Camilla's ambition is found in this slow visual execution of the new order. In the world of royal power dynamics, marginalization does not happen through public firing. It happens through 1,000 tiny logistical demotions. It is the realization that your security detail has been slightly reduced. It is the sudden requirement to submit written requests to access jewelry you previously treated as your own. It is the quiet indignity of being directed to a side door while the younger, more popular royals glide through the grand entrances to the flashes of global cameras. The administrative machinery has effectively contained her, transforming her reign into a gilded waiting room where she has the title but none of the operational control. It is a masterclass in psychological warfare, a total dismantling of a rival achieved with pristine manners and weaponized protocol. Ultimately, this story resonates far beyond the glittering tiaras and the velvet ropes of Buckingham Palace. It exposes the terrifying cold impartiality of the British monarchy as an institution. Camilla believed that by capturing the king and executing a flawless public relations strategy, she had conquered the system. She spent 30 years enduring public scorn, convinced that the ultimate prize of the royal vaults would validate her struggle. But the system is infinitely patient and it is designed to fiercely protect its own bloodline. The moment the rightful heirs asserted their constitutional authority, the illusion of her absolute power evaporated. She achieved the title she spent a lifetime chasing, only to realize that the true legacy, the wealth, and the enduring power were quietly locked away from her forever. What are your thoughts on this silent shift in protocol and the realization of Camilla's true position? Let us know your perspective in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more deep dive analytical insights into the hidden high stakes mechanics of the royal family.